Good morning. This is Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You get more information and find out about past shows and future shows at my website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Kevin Rumley, Program Director of the Buncombe County Veterans Treatment Center, for being my guest today. Thanks for joining me, Kevin.
Hi, thanks, Blaine.
Okay, and what you can do, if you would, feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this.
Hey, hey.
Hey, that's it. Okay, I love it. Okay, I should mention, I actually need probably about a half an hour just to read about your background, but I'll kind of give the Reader's Digest version. Kevin Rumley is a combat wounded Marine Corps veteran receiving a Purple Heart for injuries sustained in combat with 32 surgeries, but who counts? Wow. He's also an individual in long-term recovery, remaining a vocal community advocate for harm reduction modalities, including medication-assisted therapy and medication for opioid use disorder. He now serves as the program director for the Buncombe County Veterans Treatment Center, a diversion court for justice-involved veterans. And somehow, Kevin, you were telling me off the air, in your spare time, what else? You also teach part-time?
Yes.
And then in your
Yeah.
spare time, you also are in a band. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Also
So
playing
the only thing
music.
that's missing, I don't see it. Where are your roller skates to get back and forth to all these different things you do?
I know. Back and forth. I need that or the skateboard.
I mean, something, or how do you even know what day it is, on any given day? Let me ask you
Well, I'm
exactly.
lucky now. Yeah.
Let me ask you the question I ask a lot of times the first time I meet somebody on the air, and that is to do with in terms of as a kid you grew up where?
Fairfax, Virginia. So Northern Virginia.
Okay. So kid grew up in Fairfax, Northern Virginia. Did you always know you wanted to go into first of all, we'll start with the service. Did you always know you wanted to go into the service?
I think I knew for a long time my father was in the Marine Corps, and growing up in Northern Virginia, right outside Washington, D.C., the Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia. I think, it's instilled at a young age, this idea of service to the community and service to the country. So, my mother passed away unexpectedly when I was 15, and I found myself struggling with addiction, alcohol abuse, drug abuse. So, Marine Corps was, in a sense, it was the only option I had because I barely graduated high school, just didn't have a lot of options. So I skateboarded down the recruiter's office and said, I want to join the Marines and I want to go to war. And he said, we can do both of those.
Yeah, I guess not too many people come in with that kind of attitude. So how old were you when you joined the Marines?
Right out of high school, so I was 18 years old.
Okay. And so you were stationed originally where?
So I went to Paris Island and then School of Infantry. So I was what the Marines call a rifleman, 0311, which is pure just fire team infantry, classic um, front lines fighter. And I was stationed in 29 Palms, California. And that we did a quick, they call it a build up. So we knew we were going to war. It was the end of 2003, and they sent us to Iraq, on the furthest part west on the Syrian border. And that was the end of 2003 where I was sent there.
So you didn't get to stay in California for you took tour of duty?
No, I didn't get to grow the hair and go surfing. No.
Wow. But you still grow so that's where you have the long hair now. You got you when you were in the Marines, I assume that wasn't you didn't have that hair then. Is that correct?
No, no, I was not rocking this. For whatever reason, Marines don't support it.
No. So you went to then how old were you when you went to Iraq?
Was 18, had just turned 19. And so we were there from December. Um, and then let's see, I was injured in April of the following year in Iraq.
So that must have been some adjustment to go from Virginia to Iraq within a year. Was that like eye-opening for you?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it is an experience I don't think you can prepare for. And that's the Marines are trying to prepare you for combat. And but you're still 18, 19 years old, haven't seen the world, experienced anything. And we were thrust in these early years of the Iraq conflict. I mean, it was the Wild West. There were 100 Marines of us on the Syrian border, and we would just do foot patrols, walk around on foot patrols, and IEDs or improvised explosive device were planted everywhere. And what they do is they trigger it with a cell phone or a detonator. So they
Right.
may be 2 blocks away, and you're on a foot patrol, and they buried it in a trash can or the carcass of an animal. And as you're walking by, they can see that from a couple blocks away, click the detonator or cell phone, and it just annihilates Marines. So we ended up losing 26 out of 100 Marines. And then I was injured April 8th, 2004 by an IED.
Where was it? Was it in Israel or something like that happened in
Uh, that was still
recently?
Iraq.
No, no, but
Oh,
recently there was a big thing that people were getting walking by and getting exploded. Where that happened? You know what I'm talking about?
well, I know it is a common form
Right.
of terrorism. It's used widely, because it's unpredictable. You know, we were looking for debris that looked like it was hidden and could be a bomb. But if you operate with that mentality, you couldn't walk 5 feet because everything looks like it could be a potential booby trap bomb. And so it's just this back and forth. And, we're 19 years old and you start losing friends
Yeah.
and you have a quick 5-minute ceremony back at you know, the we turned an abandoned tire warehouse into our kind of operating base. So you have a quick ceremony for the friends you lost, and then you're back out on a foot patrol for 14 hours. And it just, yeah, as a 19-year-old, it doesn't compute. And we didn't have the emotional intelligence to kind of navigate these feelings. So what happens is we escalate. So then we would escalate our violence, which then would escalate their violence. And it's just this constant ladder and escalation. And yeah, it was eventually became just uh, truly just a death zone. So the commandant ended up pulling. This is long after I was injured, but the commandant shut down this 1-lane road in and out of Syria into Iraq because so many Marines were killed there. And fast forward, it ended up being the birthplace of ISIS. This is the stronghold, a little town called Husayba. And I often think about these little kids that when I was there as a 19-year-old, I remember I came and arrived with Tootsie Rolls. I had Tootsie Rolls that I brought from,
Very cool.
you know, back in the States. And so I'm handing out Tootsie Rolls to kids, and one of the staff sergeants or sergeant comes running up to me and hits them out of my hands and says, "We're in combat, right? We're not handing out candy here. We're in combat." Um, and so it is a mentality shift. We were in combat, but we also didn't have the skills to communicate. Our translators were murdered one after the other, so there's no way to talk to the populace to communicate. You know, us as the humanitarian effort. So it was destined to be unsuccessful. And I look back and I see those little kids that I was handing out Tootsie Rolls to, who saw their parents murdered, who saw friends or family murdered. Fast forward when they become a 16-year-old, just like I joined the Marine Corps and signed up with a recruiter, they went to their local recruiting depot, which is ISIS, and said, "Hey, you know what? I was there when my dad was killed by the Marine Corps, or I was there when my mom was." And they created ISIS, just different cultural backgrounds, but I can empathize. That's what I'm saying.
Food for thought. As we were talking about this, you were saying it doesn't compute. It doesn't compute to me now as a 75-year-old. I just can't comprehend this as you're talking about it. But I'll also share another thought with you, Kevin. And this, to me, also, I'd love you to write a book on this. Just this whole experience you've gone through. it'd be a great book. You tell it very well. So we were talking off the air about, your first book. Keep that in the back of your mind,
I will, Blaine.
But
I
because
appreciate that.
I should also congratulate you belatedly, but somehow you're too much in your spare time, you managed to also, in addition to working full time and doing 27 other things, being in a band, etc., you also recently completed your doctorate for your dissertation for your doctorate.
Yep, defended and everything. So I am done.
Yeah. But
Yes.
you were doing that in addition to doing everything else?
Yep. So it was, first got my uh, master's in social work from the University of Western North Carolina. And same time I was going there, I started working at the Buncombe County Veterans Treatment Court. And then it was during the pandemic. So in 2020, everyone's at home.
Right.
I had just finished, graduate school a couple years earlier. And I was like, well, if I'm home, I wonder if there are any doctorate programs that I could do online because all these universities started
Right.
to transition to virtual. And the University of Tennessee changed their doctorate program to online to accommodate the pandemic. And so I applied and I got in. And yeah, so it was a long journey, 2 years of the master's programs and 4 years of the doctorate. So you just do a lot of school. So it's funny, I am now done with school.
Well, you say that, but we should also share with the fact that you couldn't get away from it because now you're also teaching.
Yeah, Warren Wilson. Yeah, just an adjunct, but
And
yeah.
what are you teaching?
So I just did my first adjunct. It was their Bachelor's of Social Work program, specifically their policy and engagement
So
class.
did you enjoy teaching?
I did, yeah. I think also it gave me a great admiration for teachers. That was my greatest takeaway. It's like, okay, you know, I I didn't realize how much went into every single class and how much prep and anyways, and grading's the
So
worst. So
back to your experience. So you mentioned you're 19. You're injured for the first time.
yep.
Did you come back to the States or did you stay overseas?
Yeah, so when I was injured, um, my best friend Chris Wasser was killed by the IED blast, and then the rest of the shrapnel came through me, and it blew out my legs, blew out my knee, my femur, my bicep, through my hands, through my eye, still shrapnel all over my body. So what they did is they medically evacuated me via helicopter. I went to Germany, and then I was flown immediately to Walter Reed in Washington, D.C. That's where I had 32 surgeries. I was told I'll never walk again. Um, and interesting, in Washington, D.C. is, 15 minutes from where I grew up. So as a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, I felt like, man, I just cannot get out of this place. I joined the Marine Corps to get out of the hometown, to see the world. And here I am, full circle back at Walter Reed, not more than a year and a half, 2 years later. So um, it was, yeah, it was a shock to the system. And I should say, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I struggled for a long time because I was addicted to opioids. I had been given opioids for a year and a half, and then I'm discharged and given more opioids. So, um, same as I now support veterans who are in the justice system, who are often addicted to drugs. I know what it feels like when every cell in your body is screaming, you need this drug to stay alive. It's no longer, oh, Blaine, take this to get high and feel great and euphoric. It is the disease of addiction taking over and saying, if you want to live today and not die, we need this. So,
So how
um,
long were you in the service?
uh, I did 4 years, was discharged honorably, but 2 of those years I was spent in the hospital bed.
Well, what's incredible, so you were in the hospital, then you got eventually out of the hospital. Did you then go back into service?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay. Yeah, because I can imagine how could you, possibly, can you imagine having to go back into service, but you spent the last 2 years getting better, and
Yeah.
and that's 32 operations. Are you? or hopefully at least done with operations?
Yep. Yeah, I'm done. As healed as I can be. I'm doing great. I'm walking, and yeah, I have no complaints.
And even
Just
that was probably incredible because at one time, what you were told you'd never walk again.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
which is wild to tell an 18-year-old, 19-year-old.
so in 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, when were you starting to go to school too? When you were overseas or after you
No,
got done?
no. So, I mean, a big part of my story is having lost everything to addiction and lost friends, family, housing, lost just my world was destroyed. And so it wasn't until I think, I don't know, 2010 where I was really able to begin the process of going to college and doing all this stuff in earnest. Because before that, you can't, it's hard to go to school when you're high or drunk.
Well,
So
and
yeah, it took a while.
you're talking, you teach, and I told you off there that I taught also. And I did see a few students who could be considered high and, wondered how they did it.
Yeah.
But so then you took a while, but then you started studying as an undergraduate, what, 2010, give or take?
Yeah. Yeah. In earnest. Yeah.
And that you were going as a social, as a major in what?
Social work. Yep.
Okay. And so even that was kind of an interesting experience to go back, all of a sudden to go back to school after all these years. How long did it take you to get your undergraduate degree?
Well, it took a long time. I think I graduated in 2013, but I started, I think, right when I got out of the hospital and came to Asheville in like the end of 2006. But I would take a class and I'd fail it. Then I'd take summer classes and fail it. I mean, it was just, yeah, it was not good. Um, so I think in 2010, that's where I was like, all right, I gotta be taking all these classes. I gotta go to summer school. I gotta be doing night school, day school, everything. And I truly dove in and gave it my all. And that's when I, for the first time in my life, realized, oh, I have potential here. Like if I apply myself and don't just assume I'm a drunk, flunk pass out of school. So, and that was when, yeah, I think everything started to shift for me. And at the same time, that's when I was introduced to the Veterans Treatment Court.
Now, when you're doing that too, you going to school, were you working also at the same time?
Yeah, yeah. So I was working with a organization called NC Brookhaven Behavioral Health, and that was just providing mental health support to people in the community. So you drive to their house, or they may be under a bridge, wherever they are, and you meet them where they're at, and sometimes help with medication, food, any need. Um, and that was 2015 that I was doing that.
So when did you decide you wanted to make this your full-time gig or you wanted to do this when you grew up?
The veterans working with
Yeah.
veterans. Yeah, I should say, Blaine, I don't think I ever did. It was,
Grow up or what?
well, yeah, both. Yeah. Don't want to grow up. And I never was like, oh, I really want to work with vets. It was just an opportunity. And I think doors continued to open up in my life. And this program here in Asheville called the Veterans Treatment Court, it was cool uh, because what they do is they just, for veterans in the justice system, instead of sending them to prison, they send them through an intense program. And I just went by one day and observed the court and said, hey, I want to get involved in this. This is really cool. And fast forward, here we are, almost 10 years later, and I still love it. And they haven't fired me yet. So,
Okay. And you even get paid something, right?
oh, yeah, even get paid.
Occasionally. Kevin, I want to take a real quick time out. I just have to check one thing. I'll be right back with you. Stay here.
Thanks.
Hello again. We're back with Kevin Rumley, Program Director of the Buncombe County Veterans Treatment Center. And we're talking about some of his amazing experiences. I'm telling you, man, I'm listening to this, and it is a book. You just,
Oh, man.
what you've gone through. So you started going back to school as undergraduate, and it's kind of cool what you just said. So then all of a sudden it just hit you that this was kind of an interesting thing to learn about stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was really that simple. I should say I had prior justice involvement of my own, but it was where I was on the other side, talking to the judge. And it was really neat. It was a environment that was supportive to veterans. And instead of sending a veteran to prison for 10 years, they would plead into this program, the Veterans Treatment Court. And it's a 2-year program, intensive treatment. They're on probation. They're doing random urinalysis at least twice a week for 2 years. And all these requirements, they help with housing, they help with a job, education, everything that makes a person whole in a community. And when they complete the program, not only do they graduate, but the charge is dismissed. So it's not on their record. And I went to the courtroom and I saw the judge having a conversation one at a time with each veteran. Our judge, the founder in Asheville, his name is Marvin Pope, Judge Pope. He's a big part of my life and many of these veterans' lives. And he was talking to them. He cared about them, cared about their families, knew their relationships, knew what was important to them, and was invested in their lives. And that was antithetical to the justice system that I have grown up knowing about and experiencing. So yeah, I think really, Blaine, it was just I was kind of fascinated by it, and I kept volunteering to work with them, and then certain doors just opened up where I was hired, and then yeah, I've been there ever since, and it's just been a real joy to see lives transformed when we come together as a community and offer support instead of just punishment. It's actually support coupled with accountability. Those are the two things. So yeah, it's been a real blessing.
And listening to you, it's just incredible to me that the whole justice system doesn't kind of model that, that
Yeah,
our goal should be to make people productive, not to lock them up, I guess,
I agree.
or especially, I guess it's really sad when a veteran or anybody has family involved, and so to put them away for a period of time. So describe the program. So it's just right now where you're involved in Buncombe County, right? And it's,
Right.
and it's open to what? Any veteran, or how does one get into it, and what happens when they get into it?
Yeah. So in the state of North Carolina, there are 8 veterans treatment courts, but we have 100 counties.
Right,
So we're able to take a veteran from all 100 counties. They would have to move here for it. But how a veteran is referred, it happens through their attorney. So you get pulled over or arrested for anything. Step one is you get appointed an attorney or you hire one yourself.
right.
If a person has been in the justice system repeatedly and really struggled to make changes, that's the type of veteran we want. And so I do a lot of jail outreach. I'm going and talking to attorneys, the bar, talking to public defenders, and saying, hey, if you have someone and you learn they're a veteran, explore this as an option. And what I can do, I go talk to the veterans in jail. And what I tell the veteran, if you're looking for the easy path where you don't have to change anything, then this program is not for you. But if you're willing to change people, places, and things, and really want to transform your life, that's what we're here for. And so it's a referral. Then the district attorney, the prosecutor that represents the state's interests, he does a legal screen to make sure they're appropriate. And once they kind of go through these procedural steps, they are pled into our court. And part of that plea is they agree to all the conditions of Veterans Treatment Court, including they have to wear an electronic monitor for the first 90 days so we can see them at any time. They agree to random urinalysis at a minimum of twice a week. They agree to participating in treatment um, here at the Asheville VA. So there's all these dimensions, and but really the first step is the attorney making that referral. And how most attorneys learn about it is word of mouth. So me being on your show right now and talking about it is me promoting the Veterans Court. It's great because you may have an attorney in the
Right.
audience who listens and says, "Hey, you know what? I represent an attorney, but I'm in the western part of the state." They can reach out to me, and I'll give information at the end where they can email me. But it's as simple as that, just saying, "Hey, Kevin, I've got a veteran out here. These are his charges, and would love to talk to you about the Veterans Court."
Or I would imagine the same token, if you have, if anybody's listening as a family member who's a veteran or going through some of this stuff,
Yes.
they could get them into it too. And it's listening to you is kind of neat in that the way you're describing it, it's just the opposite of people looking like for a job, or you're looking to hire somebody, you're looking to hire the best person you possibly can get, or the cleanest person you can get. And here you're looking at just the opposite, the
Yes.
person who's way down on his or her luck, and
Yes.
just whatever. How often does this involve women?
That's a good question. So the population that we serve is what we call the most high risk, those who are likely to reoffend,
Sure,
and those who have the greatest clinical need or the most suffering. And so we see way fewer
sure.
female veterans. Right now, we only have two females. We have at any time a max of 30 participants. So as you know, if some graduate, more come in. Um, so that's kind of the statistically the spread. We usually have about one or two females for every 25 veterans, so male vets.
You gave a useful bit of information earlier, though, that if by chance they can't get into the Buncombe County program, theoretically they could go to one of the other programs in the state.
Yeah, in theory, we're what's called a superior court, so our judge has this ability to take from other counties. Some veterans courts don't do that. They only allow veterans charged in their respective county, but because we have so many resources here, because we have a superior court judge, we're fortunate to be able to take veterans from the eastern part of the state all the way to, yeah, the furthest west.
As you're describing the program, also, I was interested to find out that of the people you see, how many say this is not for them, or they're not interested, or leave me alone? Do some people say that?
We hear that. I mean, we get the whole gamut, for my favorite is we will get a referral and it comes from the attorney. And when I talk to the veteran or they're about to plea in, they're like, "Well, I just wanted to get out of jail, but like, I really don't want to do this." And that ambivalence or just straight no, middle finger, right, to you. But then slowly over time, their reluctance changes. And we say, we hold them accountable and carry them in the beginning and show that they can do it. And by the end of our journey, we have 5 phases. And by the end of it, they begin to believe in themselves and are self-sufficient. And we call it an internal locus of control. So it's no longer this external force like the judge or myself or probation saying, "You need to do this." They're internally motivated and driven. And yeah, sometimes you get a vet who says, "Nah, just send me to prison." And we still, working with the attorney, will get them into our court and they'll graduate and have changed every part of who they are.
I was going to ask you then, and you mentioned to me off the air that you have an upcoming graduation. And by the way, when
Yep.
is that upcoming graduation?
Yep. So we have a graduation at the Buncombe County Courthouse on February 7th at 10:30 a.m. on the fifth floor. And that is open to the community, February 7th, 10:30 a.m. on the fifth floor.
And the folks who graduate, I guess you keep records of this. How successful are they, or what's the, coming back rate? Do you get some people don't? What happens if it doesn't click?
Yeah, I mean, that happens too. So just regular population for anyone who doesn't enter into a specialty court like ours. Uh, Recidivism after 9 years, I think, according to Department of Justice, is around 80%.
Yeah, I've heard
So
that,
it's
right?
really high. So it means hey, people are going to return to criminal behavior. Nationally, veterans treatment courts have about a 15% recidivism rate, which is
Wow,
amazing.
that
So
is
we know
something.
it saves lives and it saves money. But we also have veterans who they do return to use or criminal behavior. And what we have seen, even for those, their charges are way less. So if they were committing a, felony level breaking and
Right.
entering, their next one may just be for possession of marijuana, right? So it's lower. It's also something called desistance, which is greater time in between criminal behaviors. Um, Something I'm really interested in is harm reduction, right? So I don't view it as a failure for a veteran to return to the justice system. I don't see it as a binary of you either are the best and never commit crimes again, or you commit crimes and you're the worst, right? I don't I don't view it in that paradigm. Instead, I view it as an individual has lived their entire life with these adaptive behaviors, whatever it is. And most veterans, they are able to transform their lives in meaningful ways. But there are other individuals who may go through a program, transform their lives, but slowly, maybe the disease of addiction returns, maybe the people in their world, their sphere of influence changes. But that to me, they now have the skills of being able to call. They have a mental health provider now. They have safe housing. They have employers that are willing to hire them. Kind of this whole world, something we call recovery capital. They get that from our program. So instead of doing all of this destruction to the community, um, we are promoting public safety where they're less, yeah, decreasing violent behavior, decreasing risky behavior. So it's to me kind of a continuum of health, not just a binary of you're out there committing crimes again and you're, yeah. Anyways, that was a
So,
tangent.
well, no, I was going to ask you so that if somebody graduates, upcoming graduation, and
Yep.
then they feel they're having trouble adjusting or falling by the wayside, can they come back to you, or is there a second chance or third chance on this?
Yeah, yeah. So if our policy is it has to have been 12 months since you graduated the program or were terminated. Yep. So if 12 months had passed, then we can take him again. And that's happened. We had one veteran, he was in our program. After 8 months, he was terminated and he just wasn't doing it. He wasn't going to anything. He wasn't showing up. He was very much reluctant. Fast forward a year and a half later, 2 years, he's in jail again, and his charges have increased. And we accept him in our court, and he, at this time, then changes his life and transforms everything about himself, people, places, and things. And now he's a peer support giving back to his community, and it really has it's stuck this time. And so I tell people we don't know when change is going to stick. We don't know if it's that first time, that second time, or that third. We don't have a crystal ball, but I'm really glad that we accepted him the second time because his life has changed. And I know in my own life, if someone had given up on me the first time, second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, it was 9 times going into the hospital, asking for help, but getting out and immediately returning to drug use and drinking. If someone had given up on me, I wouldn't even be here talking to you.
Let me ask you too. You mentioned this one success story, great story. Give me another success story of somebody who went through the program and what happened afterward.
Yeah, one of my favorites is a female veteran. When I met her, so she was 28, 29. She had been homeless for the last year. She had lost custody of four of her kids.
Wow.
So four kids taken away. They're all under the age of 10. And it was just heartbreaking. So She enters our program. The day she entered our program, she flatlined, she overdosed and died. And paramedics got her, we got her into inpatient. Well, fast forward, she left our program, not only reunited with all of her kids, stable housing, reunited with her family. We also help every single veteran get something called Service Connection. And this is basically a disability rating for injuries that happened while they were in the military. And she came into our program, and there was a long trauma history that happened in the military. She didn't know that she was eligible for compensation. She just assumed and had internalized that she didn't deserve it. She assumed, oh, well, yeah, I'm out. She had very low self-worth. She left our program and she was receiving what's called 100% service connection. And because she has four kids, so she's getting a $4,000 check every single month for the rest of her life. And for the first time in her life, this is stability that she knows I'm going to be able to pay my rent. I'm going to be able to pay my, car or my phone bill, whatever it is. Um, she's working, became a peer support. I mean, it's just the transformation on any level. I could look at any dimension of her life, and she went from living on in the woods, completely isolated. Oh, speaking of living in the woods, this is a non sequitur, Blaine.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had a veteran. He had lived in the woods for 40 years. 40 year 40. And he just graduated our program last year, and he's now a certified peer support. He did great. He's just an amazing human. And I saw him, he was doing poetry readings, he was doing some interpretive dance, all these things. But for 40 years, he had lived away from society.
Was he the oldest graduate you've had?
He may have been, yeah,
Yeah. Wow, I'm sorry. I'm getting a chill just listening to these stories, you know.
it was wild.
Incredible. If people come to graduation, uh, do each of the graduates, do they tell their story?
Yep, so you'll experience their personal story. Yep.
Okay, very, very moving. If folks want to get more information about this program, and what program, by the way, just back to the judge, I've heard great things about him as well. And then he doesn't even live in the area anymore, or he never lived in the area. He lives in Tennessee. Is that true?
Yep, he lives in Tennessee now. He did live in the area, but I think he wanted more space and a farm for
Okay.
the horses.
But what's amazing, he's still coming back to Buncombe, Asheville to be the judge of these courts.
Yeah, he's still driving. He's committed.
Okay, that is a great story. If folks want to get more information about this whole program, what's the best bet?
Yeah, best way is going to our website, www.buncombeveteranscourt.com. So Buncombe, veterans, veterans, court, court.com. And buncombeveteranscourt.com, you can find everything there, some videos we've made, links to our podcasts, just anything. Oh, and contacting me. I'll provide my email if that's okay.
Please, if you would. Yeah.
Yeah. So my email is just my name, Kevin.Rumley, Rumley, at buncombecounty.org. That's BUNCOMBECOUNTY.org.
And we should mention one other thing too before I let you go, and that is, in addition to all the other things you do, you also intend have a podcast as well. And if folks tune in on the podcast, just if you would talk about two things: how do they find it, and what will they see if they go to the podcast?
Yeah, thank you. That's our podcast is called the VTC Podcast, Voices of Recovery. And you can find it on all podcast streaming platforms. So that's Apple, Buzzsprout, whatever you listen to. Just type in VTC Podcast, Voices of Recovery. And what you'll hear are the stories of our veterans who are gone through the program. but also the staff members and people that make it possible, including interviews with Judge Pope, interviews with the district attorney, but also interviews with veterans who went through our program, who had the ups and the downs and graduated.
And since you've been involved in the program, approximately how many folks have graduated?
Since I've been there, I think we've had about 65 graduates from our 2-year program.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of the Blaine's World webcast. And hopefully I'll get to at least at some point in time, I'll even bump into you in person.
Yeah,
And just a heads up if anybody's listening, Kevin's going to be my guest in a couple of weeks, and you'll also get to hear about some of his other stuff he does, your music
yeah.
stuff you do in your spare time. Thank you,
That's
man. This was great. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and you be well. Hopefully we'll bump into each other sometime. Thanks, man.
sounds great. Thanks, Blaine.